Good morning, everyone. I'm interrupting for the sake of sort of signaling you that we'll start in a bit. But as a preliminary, we wanted to show you this video as an introduction to our main speakers that will come on later in the program. So please enjoy the video and finish up your breakfast, and we'll formally begin afterwards.
Well, HK, where you want to go today?
New York City.
New York City? That's a long way. I don't know if the 55 will make it that far.
Let's try.
About 4 years ago, I stopped at Mrs. Winter's and saw this young fellow sitting at a table by himself.
He's blind, has cerebral palsy, was born premature. His mom was killed in an accident. His dad didn't want him. His grandmother, Pearl, has raised him.
Said me, you need honey or jelly or hot sauce? Hot chicken. Okay, mashed potatoes, no gravy.
She works hard to make ends meet. What you doing?
I couldn't get that off my mind for several weeks. Came home, told Brenda about this little boy I met. And
He is something special.
Yeah.
This living miracle, HK.
Here we go, Titan. There we go.
Are you serious?
Who is it? Hey, hello? Who is it? Who is it?
hey, pal.
Hi.
Hey, what's up? He's a neat little person, probably the most outstanding, dynamic personality of any person I've ever met.
Come over here, man. I hadn't seen you in how long? Have you missed me?
Yes.
He's just always thrilled to see us, and we just love him.
Jim and Brenda Bradford have grown daughters and a full life, but they decided to make room for HK and Pearl in theirs. And they've given HK something he didn't have. More of a childhood, more of a chance.
I get to the normal things that the boys get to do normally. A happy boy, yeah, because I'm a good kid. I'm a good teenager.
HK is a good teenager, and he now has a positive male role model in his life.
All right.
Sometimes the greatest of life's celebrations come to us from unknown directions. Janet Carroll Richardson, Channel 4 News.
So who does Vanderbilt play next week?
Florida, well, Louisville, one day next week.
Here or there?
Bank Hill.
Okay, what about Florida?
They play them in Florida.
Well, most people find it hard to remember where they put their car keys, glasses, or even what they had for dinner last night.
Well, what if you could remember everything that ever happened to you? Well, it is true. It's called hyperthymesia, and doctors say only 2 cases have been reported in the world. One of them is right here in the mid-state. Tonight, News Channel 5's Kim Gebbia shares with us a boy's extraordinary gift and a survival story to boot.
As time passes,
It can be hard to remember what happened last week, what happened last year, or recall even a faint memory from 10 years ago.
I'm finished, so I'm gonna spell check it.
But inside the Tennessee School for the Blind, a 21-year-old student who appears disabled and mentally challenged quietly listens, quietly stores an extraordinary gift.
My earliest memory is the first day I ever come to the school on Tuesday, September the 7th of 1993.
That was when H.K. Derryberry was just 3 years old, and he can remember more than just the date.
It was like 85 degrees that day.
Even how he felt on that first day of school.
Which I felt really good that day. I was really, really excited.
Now a senior at TSB, he can recall every single detail of his life since.
So if I give you a random day, you could tell me what you were doing on that day?
Yes.
So we quizzed HK's memory, randomly asking him about the first Saturday of July, 2009.
First Saturday in July of 2009, I went to Mr. Bradford's, we got ready, went to a picnic at the Huddleston's house.
Like a Rolodex, he walked us through each memory, even what he had for lunch.
It was barbecue.
But surprised us when he revealed what unfolded later that day.
Shocking news from downtown Nashville today.
Between 4 and 5, somebody came out of the house and told me that Steve McNair had been shot.
McNair was discovered dead along with a 20-year-old woman.
Sure enough, it was the day Steve McNair was murdered in his Nashville apartment. But was this just a lucky guess? So we asked about Saturday, October 4th, 2008.
It was a history-making night on West End.
HK says he watched the Vanderbilt football game.
They beat Auburn on Saturday, October 4th of 2008.
And this win was a history maker.
To make Vandy 5-0. They beat Auburn 14-13 that day.
13-14, baby. Awesome game.
He was right again. HK's doctor at Vanderbilt Medical Center says it's not luck, but a very rare gift.
Primarily, he's extremely interesting, and there's only been, 1 or 2 cases in the world reported about people who have this, what's termed hyperthymesia, which is the ability to remember anything that's ever happened to them.
Miracle child with a memory that could help others.
There was a purpose for me. God only knows what the purpose was.
HK says when he does realize his life purpose, luckily, it's something he'll never forget. In Nashville, Kim Gebbia, News Channel 5 HD.
It's extraordinary. H.K. Derryberry is graduating this year from the School for the Blind and plans to be a motivational speaker.
Well, good morning again. I will introduce Jim Bradford and H.K. Derryberry a little later in our program, but welcome to the 27th breakfast for mothers and sons. Thanks especially to our Mothers Club for helping host this morning. I'm reminded that 27 years ago, we made the decision to have a mother-son event. It started in the afternoon with mainly the senior class out in the quadrangle, the Sloan quadrangle, and Amy Grant came to sing, primarily because her nephew was in that senior class. The program then evolved to a breakfast as you see this morning. We wish everyone could be here today, but as I think most of you know, we are streaming this so that the 9th and 10th grades can be part of this as well. And the program was started primarily to have some parity with the father-son events. and to have a morning of meaning and appreciation for mothers and the relationship between a mother and a son. I'd like to say a special thanks now to 3 individuals and ask you to help me add your thanks. First, the chairs, Kate Alassi and Mary Kate Hooper, if they'd please come down, and the president of the Mothers Club, Paige Hill, if she would come down as well. Join me in thanking the 3 of them for all their work. And of course, I'd like to add my thanks to Sage for the breakfast this morning, and to our maintenance crew for their work in making sure that we're all set up, and our tech department as well. You have programs in front of you, so we'll commence with the program. I hope you enjoy this morning, and I'll ask now Andrew and then Joseph to come up. Join me in welcoming Andrew Bulgarino.
Good morning, everyone. This speech has definitely been the most difficult one I've had to write, but also the most rewarding one I've ever had to write. Difficult because, like many other times in my life, I'm going to try and one-up my older brother, Alex, who gave a fantastic speech a few years ago at this same breakfast. It is without a doubt the most rewarding, though, because I get to brag about my mom, a gesture which I love to do all the time. And I can say, for the first time in my life, that trying to make my mom cry is a good thing. So here it goes. My mom has somehow managed to deal with 2 demanding full-time jobs. She is a top-level executive engineer at a renewable energy company, and she has to deal with me, my brother, my dad, and all of the accompanying bickering, arguments, and pettiness. The bright side, though, of all the arguments about whose socks are whose, is that I think it did make my mom actually enjoy having to work with the federal government on some of her projects. She has had to travel for most weeks out of the year for her job for pretty much my entire life, but even still, she has become the best role model I could ever ask for. When I was in kindergarten, I had extreme anxiety, which I had to reveal yesterday too at the college essay contest. I wouldn't talk to anyone at school, and eventually it got so bad that I would sit by myself in the corner crying almost every day for my mom to come pick me up. My parents believed that I wasn't entirely hopeless, and so they decided to homeschool me. Though my dad was the main teacher, my mom would give me a break from his strict lessons to let me travel with her on a few of her work trips. Even though I was just a kid and didn't understand much about her work, seeing her thrive in that intense environment gave me a perfect example to emulate. Mom, I know you say that I have your looks, but Dad's personality, and that's probably true, but I know that it was you that helped me develop the emotional intelligence that I needed to overcome my anxiety. Without those trips with you, I definitely would not be speaking here today. Okay, now it's time for the slightly embarrassing in a good way part of the speech, which is a must-have in all mother-son speeches. My mom is the only person that I know that would be able to run a marathons in Athens without music, not by choice, but because she accidentally disabled her iPhone for longer than a day after entering in the same wrong passcode at least 100 times. She's also the only person I know that is somehow louder than my dad and I, but only during her work calls, when she's in her office and I can hear her on the other side of the house. She's also the only person I know who could fly back home from DC at 6 a.m. on a Friday morning and then stay up until about 3 a.m. watching a football movie with me after I had just lost the last high school football game of my life. It's moments like these where I find a special appreciation for my mom. I have the rare privilege of being able to believe unconditionally that my mom wants the best for me. She shows it in everything that she does, whether it's a simple task to clean my room and make my bed, or her somehow convincing me, who has hated running since I was a baby, to run the Nashville half marathon with her. One of my proudest memories is crossing that finish line with you, Mom, 30 minutes behind you. She has made and will continue to make me the best person I can possibly be. Mom, it's impossible to replicate or reciprocate your selflessness, but I hope you know that I do notice and deeply appreciate all of the things that you do for me. I joke with you about your alliance with Alex because he's your partner for spades, but I know that as your youngest child, I'll always be your baby, and I wouldn't trade that special connection for anything else in the world. I love you, Mom.
So I have a fun habit of not telling my mom important things, and this is finally one she can't get mad at me for. Hello to all the mothers and sons out there. My name is Joseph Bilardo, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be speaking about my wonderful mother today, Denise Bilardo. My mom has always been the most important person in my life. She never ceases to amaze me with her unconditional love for everyone around her, her selfless nature, and her ability to lose her phone, wallet, keys, and purse, sometimes in the span of 5 minutes. My mother's the kind of person who's never met someone that they didn't know, and she can talk to anyone about anything for hours. I've often found myself doing the classic nod and smile while she talks to one of her friends outside church or when we encounter one of her coworkers on a run. I'm not kidding when I say she will literally talk to anyone about anything. When COVID hit, I thought everyone wearing masks would make it harder for her to have these conversations, but of course I was wrong, and if anything, she's had more of a reason to reach out than ever. A perfect example of her naturally extroverted personality and empathy was during my 8th grade year, when Nashville received snow much to the same scale that we recently experienced. That morning, our paper deliverer tried to stop in our driveway, but of course didn't, and slid all the way down the driveway into our backyard. Imagine my mother's surprise, who is an early riser, when she saw a silver Prius stationary in our backyard just sitting there. Of course, my mother's first reaction, not knowing who it was in the car or why it was in our backyard, was to go out and invite the somewhat bewildered driver into our house, make her coffee, and basically make friends with her for the morning. And when I stumbled out of bed at the early hour of 10 or 11 and saw Jane and my mother drinking coffee and enjoying some breakfast, I still thought I was dreaming. But this practice of killing strangers with kindness has always been one of my mother's guiding principles. Every day, she goes out of her way to make the day better for anyone she interacts with, whether it be her favorite Kroger cashiers, Regina and Donnie, or our garbage man, whose truck I have seen her literally chase at a full sprint to give him his Christmas present. One of my favorite stories of her kill them with kindness mentality comes from my early childhood, around kindergarten. One day we were driving back from school, and a snapping turtle emerged from the bog-like depths of the roadside creek to slowly begin crossing the street. Instead of swerving into the other lane to avoid hitting what has got to be one of the least lovable creatures out there, she stopped both lanes of traffic with her car so she could get a box out and carry the turtle across the street, who literally tried to eat her fingers the whole way. In many ways, that story's a microcosm for our relationship. I, of course, am the snapping turtle. Yes, I just compared myself to a snapping turtle. And she carries me through life despite my best efforts. Even when I don't deserve it, she keeps me on the right path, helping me through the challenges of life. And honestly, my room is basically a glorified bog sometimes, so maybe the metaphor fits in more than one way. Having finished 4 marathons and 4 half marathons, one would have expected me to be a somewhat decent runner. But for anyone who knows me, that is absolutely not the case. My athletic career is maybe one of the great what-ifs of the last decade, but that being said, my mother's never missed a track meet or a soccer game, no matter how poorly I finished in the 800 and how painful it must have been for her to watch. One could understand her coming to my junior school meets, but I started track in 4th grade, which means I've been subjecting my mother to my horrendous athletic experiences for 7 years. But no matter how poorly a game or a run would go, or how frustrated I would be at the end, my mother would always tell me I'd done perfectly, and just focus on the one or maybe no things I did right. Even in the rain during a JV soccer scrimmage, she would be there with a poncho and an umbrella cheering me on from the sidelines. And even now, she finds a way to make it to every mock trial competition. And despite her little knowledge of law to begin with, she now has an almanac-like knowledge of the rules of procedure. And she loves to quote phrases like preponderance of the evidence and propensity to me in arguments. What's most impressive is that she does it all, despite a full-time job as a physical therapist, serving on countless committees at our church, being a class mom, heading up the Sunshine Committees at both Harpeth Hall and MDA. I'm not even sure if that's allowed, and even chairing this very breakfast last year. But despite her incredible busyness, she goes out of her way to make every day special. As many of you know, I am not a morning person, but my mom could not be more different. She voluntarily wakes up at 5:30. After she runs, she comes home, makes breakfast, pries me out of bed with a crowbar with an inner happiness and positivity I've never understood. In junior school, if I ever got out of the car without saying, "I love you," she'd roll the window down and yell, "I love you," as loud as she could in front of all of my friends. And despite my somewhat childish embarrassment at the time, as my time at MBA comes to an end, I've begun to realize that, among other things, it's the simple "I love yous" and "have a good days" that I'll miss more than anything in the world. As all of the young men in the room know, our moms are rocks, and we'd basically be helpless without them. They constantly put themselves second to make our lives easier, especially when we don't deserve it. I mean, my mom literally watched 9 seasons of The Office just because my dad and I wanted to. Mom, you've always been my superhero, and I don't know what I'm going to do with you next year. You always have the answer to any problem I could have, and you've pushed me to be the person I am. And one day, I hope I can embody some of the same values and things you do. I love you, Mom.
Thank you, Andrew and Joseph. While the Basie and Ellington bands now get ready to perform, I thought I'd give you a little bit of the backstory of the senior speaking. I learned about 5 or 10 years ago that it was better just to ask the seniors who would like to speak. And it's amazing how many boys come to me and say they want to speak. And so many boys that I'm glad we have a luncheon later in May to allow the other boys who have not spoken to have that opportunity as well. And secondly, I asked them to turn in a talk a few days before this event with the instructions that it should be of a certain length and talk about, obviously, your relationship, and also try to give some advice to the younger students about that relationship, because I think you grow into it, and I think this breakfast provides that kind of benefit and education. Join me now in welcoming the Basie and Ellington bands.
Check, check.
This thing called love, well, I just can't handle it. This thing called love, well, I must get around to it. I ain't ready. Crazy little thing called love. Well, this thing called love, well, it cries in a cradle all night. It swings and it jives. Shakes all over like a jellyfish, kinda like it. Crazy little thing called love. There goes my baby. Not knowing about me, golden baby. She gives me hot cold fever, she leaves me in a cool, cool sweat. I gotta be cool, relax, get hip, get on my tracks, take a backseat, hitchhike, take a long, long ride on my motorbike till I'm ready. Crazy little thing called love. Gotta be cool, relax, get hip, and get on my tracks. Take a backseat, hitchhike, take a long, long ride on my motorbike till I'm ready. Crazy little thing called love. There goes my baby. Know what I'm talking about, she calls me baby. She gives me hot cold fever and she leaves me in a cool, cool sweat. This thing called love, I can't handle it. This thing called love, well, I just got around to it. I ain't ready. Crazy little thing called love. Crazy little thing, oh, crazy little thing called love. 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 Crazy little thing called love.
So thanks to both our bands. Breckenridge, great job, and the solo there. Nothing like Freddie Mercury to wake you up at 8:15 in the morning. So as the bands return to their seats, would Patrick and then Eman please come up?
Good morning. My name is Patrick Burgandy, and first I would like to thank Mr. Joya for giving me the opportunity to brag about my mother, Elizabeth Burgandy. And like Andrew, I will try to make my mom cry, and by the looks of it, it's already working. So, Mom, surprise, and I love you. Fundamentally, every boy's mother is a very special person, and I know, in my case, my mom and I have had a close connection throughout the entirety of my life. I do not have one memory in my upbringing in which my mom did not play an influential role in supporting me every step of the way. My mother grew up very poor in Columbus, Mississippi, and she's the second oldest of 4 children, yet she is often revered as the sweetest, most caring, and loving of the 4. My mom's biological father made inexcusable choices which led to an early break in their family, and after that she lost her stepfather at a young age. And in order to help her single mother, my mom began work at a dental hygiene office at the age of 14. Now, I don't know about you, but if I went into a dental hygienist office at the age of 14 and saw a 14-year-old with a power drill, I would be a little bit concerned. But after moving to Carmel, Indiana, it was apparent that my mom would not have the money to attend college where she wanted to go. This obstacle did not deter my mother, as she worked hard to achieve her degree in dental hygiene from UT Memphis Dental School. Essentially, my mom has been working in a professional office for the past 40 years, which is honestly ridiculous, but a journey which explains my perfect cavity record and extraordinarily clean teeth. So thank you, Mom. From the second I was born, my mom loved me unconditionally. During my younger life, my dad's job took us out to Germany. Basically a trip and a journey that would shatter the world around my mom. However, she sees this as a trip and a journey to allow me to expand my horizon. She made it her goal to travel around the world with me, allowing me to experience different cultures, foods, and extraordinary sights and monuments. For instance, my mom took me to Morocco to ride camels and elephants, a trip I'll never forget. Upon returning to the States, my mom would make me do workbooks covering every subject imaginable in school from the ages of 6 to 12. My younger self detested these exercises with a passion. However, I realized to this day that my mom was doing all she could to prepare me for the future. My mom is my superhero. I've never seen someone so determined to fold laundry, wash the dishes, take care of the dogs, and clean the entire house in less than 5 minutes, all before church. My mom has raised me in a Christian household, teaching me the values of how to lead a life of a gentleman and how to have success for the future. My mom has been supportive in everything I do, especially accompanying me through the rigor of MBA. My mom has attended every sporting event, math competition, or extracurricular activity that I've chosen to take part in. My mom even read the Big Red Store for a year, and I'm sure some of you mothers know that that's a near impossible task. She would fill my closet with new apparel that would outgrow me in just a couple of years. My mom also has a fair share of her comical moments. For instance, unlike most mothers, my mom forced me to take vitamins every night through many of the past years, and has even justified this action by claiming that everyone takes them. And upon asking my friends who were in the room, I found out that literally no one takes vitamins. Being a dental hygienist, my mom also has some odd dental hygienist tendencies. For instance, my mom banned me from playing lacrosse at the age of 10 once I chipped my baby teeth on a lacrosse stick. I'm not allowed to eat at McDonald's, and for every Halloween, I'm not allowed to eat the Sour Patch Kids. And if those stories sound weird to you, my mom and I were in the park one afternoon when one of my friends from church walked by with her dog. And like any normal mother, my mom went up to the dog, opened its mouth to inspect its teeth, commenting on the whiteness of the dog's teeth. So thank you, Mom, for that embarrassing moment. All jokes aside, my mom and I have shared every special moment in my life, and I know that we have a bond that will never break. Throughout the years, I've realized and reflected on how important my mom is to me, how I need to cherish and appreciate every moment that I have with her. No one loves me more than my mom, and no one is willing to sacrifice everything for me like my mom is. If someone came up to me and asked me, who is the most influential and important person in your life, I would emphatically respond with, my mom, because of the example of selflessness, hard work, compassion, and kindness that she exhibits. Even though I'm moving to Texas next fall for the next 4 years, my mom will somehow find a way to buy a house less than 20 minutes away from campus. The more I think about this crazy idea, the more I become fond of it. I've been waiting to give this speech for 5 years, and I love you, Mom, and I feel honored to be a mama's boy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Emmanuel Barrett, and if you don't know me, you certainly know my exuberant and iconic mom, Tina Basie Barrett. I'm so honored to have this opportunity today to give a surprise speech to my mom, especially when she told me numerous times before this speech that there's no way I would come up here and make a speech about her. It's a surprise. Tina Barrett radiates positivity in every room she enters and brings joy to everyone she meets. But most importantly, she sacrifices her time to invest in the well-being of others. When I was thinking of stories that capture my mom's character and our relationship, I thought back to the beginning of my 9th grade year. I tore my meniscus and was diagnosed with scoliosis all in 1 week. Devastated by these 2 health issues, I was unsure about my future at MBA. Through it all, my mom remained steadfast and optimistic, taking me to physical therapy after school, hearing me repeatedly bother the physical therapist about insignificant teenage worries, like if I could enjoy my first homecoming without crutches, as if that's the end of the world. Even while I was injured, my mom challenged my complacency. If I got a high mark or award that I wanted, so what? She'd ask, what's next? For every congratulations, and I'm proud of you, she also tells me to aim higher. Before I knew it, I was in Mr. Joy's office on crutches with my mom and my dad talking about colleges and how I could get into the top schools. She told me that if I wanted to get into a top college, that tennis was not going to be my path. At the time, it was incredibly hard to hear this. But of course, as mothers are, she was right. She advised me to redirect my time and explore other interests. Her encouragement to branch out led to my leadership in community service and tearing down the walls. Any endeavor that I decide to partake in, whether it's serious or lighthearted, my mom is right there beside me. I remember one fateful family spring break trip to Universal Studios, Florida. My pride, larger than my courage, I noticed the menacing Rip Ride rocket with its 180-degree takeoff and subsequent stomach churning. I pointed out this beast of a ride to my mom. That was a mistake. My adventurous mom suggested, or really pressured me, onto this torturous roller coaster with her. The seat belts clicked, arm bars locked in, and the cart shifted into a complete upright position. I was not ready. Tears started to flow down my face while my mom patiently waited for the ascent to finish, as if nothing wrong could happen. My mom laughed at my embarrassed self as we watched the replay again and again of me crying in complete agony. So thanks for making me relive that, Mom. Now, I go on every single roller coaster I see, the taller, the better, just so I can be as brave as my mom. Vacations are a central part of the Barrett family, all planned and organized by my wonderful mom. Of course, because my dad would surely get the plans mixed up, like losing our passports the day before our trip to Aruba. Yes, that actually happened. This past summer, when we were in Naples, Florida, one of my friends, Mauro, had a first-hand experience of a Barrett vacation, specifically a Tina Barrett vacation. Watching her FaceTime with her sisters while jamming to some music, Mauro said to me, "I'll know I've made it in life when I can vacation like Tina Barrett." Simply put, Tina Barrett knows how to have fun, especially when music is involved. Sometimes, or really all the time, I wish to forget this memory, but my mom never fails to remind me every year when she gets a Facebook memory of me and my sister doing the Drake Kiki challenge. The smile on her face seeing her kids do a viral challenge to a Drake song is unrivaled. But sometimes I just can't keep up, whether you're doing a drive-by birthday party for Ashley Cook, blasting into club, or dancing in the store when your favorite song comes on. Mom, I'm so grateful to be your twin because everyone can tell that I'm your son, and there's no greater privilege than that relationship. I have evidence that everyone knows you because every single store that I go to visit, someone walks up to me and asks if I'm Tina's son. Honestly, I feel bad for the number of people who told me, hey, say hi to your mom for me, because I don't know who half of them are. It's truly amazing how many lives you left a positive impact on. An unforgettable person with an unforgettable personality. Tina is even talked about on the regular by my friends, whether it's about your funky fro or stylish clothes. I know the general consensus is that you're truly an icon. I would be remiss if I didn't thank you for all the sacrifices you have made for me, Mom. Being a stay-at-home mom is a full-time job. I know that I sometimes take you for granted, but I truly am thankful for how invested you are in my life. You are unapologetically proud of your kids because you know the crucial role you have in shaping our lives. You gave up the materialistic things that we value so much, such as declining the opportunity to continue engineering at Harvard, Stanford, or Northwestern, and a job as a top Ford engineer. I hope to inherit just a fragment of your intelligence, passion, style, vibrance, and of course, 5-star cooking skills. Thank you for sacrificing these accomplishments to push me towards success and bring joy into my life. I love you, Mom.
Thanks, E-Man and Patrick. You saw on a video earlier the relationship of HK and Jim Bradford. This should be a remarkable story of friendship and appreciation. Please join me now in welcoming H.K. Dearyberry and Jim Bradford to the stage.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, you ready? Okay. Good morning, MBA good morning, MBA students and mothers.
Wait a minute, HK, do that again. Ainsworth gave you a big deal. I know.
Good morning, MBA students and mothers. I'm H.K. Dearyberry. This is my good friend and mentor, Mr. Jim Bradford.
Good morning.
We are very honored to be invited to share our story with you this morning. We hope our presentation will be highly inspirational and motivational. I realize the importance of starting this breakfast on time, but I was afraid we were going to be late getting here this morning. Traffic on West End was bumper to bumper, and I was driving as fast as I could to get here. We finally made it. The only problem is all you mothers took up all the good parking places. So I don't know where I parked my vehicle. So when you leave to breakfast this morning, if any of you see a red SUV with Williamson County license plate, please let me know. That just might be my vehicle. You may not realize by looking at me, I have some disabilities. I am blind and I have cerebral palsy, so I can't do all the things that you young men can do. It doesn't keep me from wanting to do those things. I even dream of doing those things that people have told me all my life I can never do with my disabilities. Like many of you, I love sports. I've always wanted to play sports, but I figure with my disabilities, I'll never have the opportunity. But just in case the opportunity ever presents itself, like your 12th grade sponsor, David Deutsch, I've always tried to stay in great tip-top physical condition. For the past 2 years, my David Deutsch exercise routine includes waking up at 5 a.m., try to be real quiet not to wake my grandmother up. Then I put on my running shoes and my Ryan Tannehill Tennessee Titans sports attire. Then I get my heart rate up by walking around the block 3 times as fast as I can. Then I stop, take a couple deep breaths to relax. Then I bend over, I pick up the block. Then
Wait, HK.
Oh.
This is a slow group, HK.
Then I put the block back in the closet. Then I climb back in bed, sleep to 10. My favorite sport is football. I've always wanted to play football, but I figure with my disabilities, I will never have the opportunity. However, last year, the day after University of Alabama Crimson Tide crushed the Tennessee Volunteers for the 14th consecutive year in football, I overheard a disgruntled Tennessee football fan who goes to NBA here said, our quarterback, Tennessee's quarterback, must be blind. He couldn't complete a single pass. Well, folks, when I heard that, that's the most exciting news I'd ever heard. I thought, if Tennessee's quarterback's blind, I'm blind, I can probably play quarterback in high school. So I immediately visited with the NBA varsity football coach, Marty Uberrod. I said, Coach, I want to try out for quarterback. Coach took one look at me, said, HK, thanks for trying out. You are a brave young man. But you are too small. You're not fast enough. You don't weigh enough. And your last name is not Manning. So as you would expect, you students would expect, I didn't make the team. I didn't give up though. I was once told your attitude determines your altitude in life. So, like all you students, I never gave up. I like to soar like an NBA Red Eagle, big Red Eagle, chasing a busload of Brentwood Academy football players. Then I thought to myself, I said, HK, let's think of something that would be easy for you students to do, but would be very challenging for a blind boy to do. Then I remembered, I have been riding in my grandmother's vehicle for 30 and a half years now. She makes driving seem really easy. When I heard that your headmaster, Brad Joya, drives 50 in a 35-mile-an-hour speed zone while drinking Starbucks coffee and sending text messages at the same time, I thought, since I don't drink coffee and I don't text, driving must be really easy. So I immediately enrolled in driver's education. The instructor took one look at me, said, "HK, thanks for enrolling in this course. You are a brave young man, but you need a learner's permit for completion of this course. Come back when you can get one." Well, students, as you can imagine, I hadn't been back, and I won't be going back until they invent a car that can safely drive itself. Students, I realize here at MBA, you are expected to always be honest and tell the truth. Well, I must apologize to you this morning. What I just told you is not the truth. It's a joke. With my disability, of us boys are blind, so we don't have a football team, much less offer driver's education. If they offered driver's ed, they'd lose all their all of their federal funding. Plus, the accident rate in Tennessee would be a lot higher. As Romans 12:6 says, God has given each of us the ability to do certain things well. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. In sports, there's small schools like Tribeca University, if they have to play a big school like UT, Tennessee, or Kentucky in basketball, they would be considered the underdog, which means they are not expected to win. Well, in life, I have always been considered the underdog. What I mean by that is people tell me things I can't do without complimenting me for things that I can. When I was born, due to the accident that took my mother's life, doctors told my grandmother I probably wouldn't live long. Well, July 8th of this past year, I just turned 30 years old and I'm still kicking. Doctors also told my grandmother I would probably be confined to a wheelchair. Well, I walked in here today, no need for a wheelchair. In school, teachers told my grandmother and I that I wasn't smart enough nor capable to handle a regular academic class load. So they were saying I wouldn't graduate high school. Well, June 1st, 2012, this little underdog pulled a major upset. I completed all the courses required of me by the state of Tennessee in order to receive a regular academic high school diploma, and I passed them all, including algebra, which was especially a challenge for a blind boy who reads and writes Braille with only the use of one hand. What I am sharing with you students today is, with God in your life, anything is possible. If you work hard, determine what your capabilities are, maintain positive attitude, you can accomplish most anything in life within your capabilities. The only disability any of us have in life is a negative attitude. So I encourage all of you to always be positive. If you are ever down, depressed, just think things can't get any worse, just pick up the phone, call toll-free to our HK Dairyberry in Columbia, Tennessee. I will give you a no-charge, 100% money-back guarantee. MBA Big Red Pep Talk. Before I was 9 years old, my grandmother and I did not have much of a social life. We didn't have kids in the neighborhood that would play with me. Kids in the neighborhood looked at me like I was different. They were afraid of me. So when I wasn't in school, most of the time I was at home from the time I got up in the morning till I went to bed at night, listening to a radio. That can be fun some days, but also that can get to be very lonely, especially for a blind boy who is not mobile without assistance. But all that changed when I turned 9 years old. I met a good friend and mentor, Mr. Jim Bradford. He made an investment into me. He quickly changed my life. He let me do things normal boys my age get to do that I had never gotten to do. He became a father figure to me, which I never really had, because my father abandoned me at age 5. Mr. Bradford let me borrow his eyes. What I mean by that is, soon as how I can't see, he painted word pictures for me so I could visualize things he was seeing. He told me he loved me. He told me he was proud of me. He's proud to introduce me to his friends. He told me I would be a success in life. He and his wife Brenda even buy me nice clothes so I look like other young men my age. 21 and a half years later, the return on Mr. Bradford's initial investment into me has created a priceless friendship.
On October 16th of 1999, I had certainly a life-changing experience. I had played tennis that Saturday morning, something I did for the last 20 years at that point with a couple of friends of mine. We played indoors, and for some reason that morning, as we played tennis, I'm not sure why, but I normally back then only drank 1 cup of coffee a day. I had already met in Green Hills at McDonald's for breakfast with my buddies before we got to the indoor tennis courts. But as we played tennis, all I could think about was having another cup of coffee. So when the match was over, unlike most Saturday mornings, I just told the guys bye and went and got in my car and headed to Brentwood where I live, and I was on my way to Starbucks. In life, you're going to always have decisions to make. Some of those are major, some are minor. That morning, I had what was, I thought, a very minor decision to make that turned out to be a tremendously major decision. But when I got to the traffic light, if you're familiar with Brentwood, we really don't have a downtown Brentwood, but the major intersection is Old Hickory Boulevard and Franklin Road. And when I got to the intersection, the traffic light turned red, I stopped. And if I turned right, which I was planning to do, and drive exactly 1 mile, I'm at Starbucks. For some reason, I looked to my left, and about 30 feet in the air was a red and white sign that said, Mrs. Winter's Chicken and Biscuits. When the light turned green, instead of turning right, I turned left. Instead of driving a mile, I drove 1/10 of a mile, pulled into a little parking lot that had potholes like our city streets this past winter. The little red and white building I was getting my gourmet coffee was in need of a paint job, repairs, but I went inside to get my coffee. And as I went up to the counter to the clerk, she said, "May I help you?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I'd like a cup of coffee." She said, "Are you a senior? Are you 55? I was actually 56, but I hoped I didn't look that age. And I said, "Yes, ma'am," but I'm thinking, what does that have to do with getting a cup of coffee? She said, "Congratulations, because at 55 you qualify as a senior. Instead of 95 cents, your cup of coffee is only 25 cents. I said, "Hot dog, that's great. I lost my tennis match. This is wonderful. Does that include chicken?" She said, "No, just coffee." And so anyway, unlike the people over at Starbucks, if you've been to Starbucks, and I'm sure all of you have, you know, they say, "May I help you?" and then they even write your name on your cup, and when they get your order filled, they say, "Oh, Jim, your coffee is ready. Please come back to see us." Unlike Mrs. Winters, they just reached into a little device and handed me a white styrofoam cup, said, "The coffee's over there in those urns." So I go over and fix my coffee, and as I'm about to leave for the first time, when I walked in, I didn't think there was anybody in the dining area. It was about 10:45. I'm thinking maybe this is a transition between breakfast and lunch. But as I got ready to leave, to go get in my car and go do the things that my wife had for me planned for the day, I see a little boy sitting at a table by himself listening to a radio. He had braces on his legs. He needed a haircut. He had on a kind of a dirty T-shirt with food stains on the front of it, maybe from that morning's breakfast or previous breakfast that week. But I'm thinking, I wonder what the little boy's doing here, because there's no adults with him. And I turned back to the counter where the lady was putting utensils in a container, I guess, for lunch. And I said, "Pardon me." I said, "Who's the little boy?" She said, "Oh, that's HK. He's our sweetheart." I said, "Well, what's he doing here?" She said, "Well, his grandmother is our cashier. She's the one that took your order for the coffee. She can't afford a babysitter, so on Saturdays and Sundays, he comes and sits while she works." I said, "How long does he sit?" She said, "Only from 8 till 5. Now, the little boy was 9 years old. I'm going to find out later, but he was so small that he looked like he was about 5 years old. And I said, "You've got to be kidding." And I offended her. She said, "Well, he doesn't do it every day." He said he goes to school during the week, just weekends. And as I turned to leave with my coffee, she said sarcastically, "And he's also blind." Now, at that point in my life, I was 56 years old. I had never really spent any time with a person with disabilities. If I saw somebody, especially a young person with disabilities, I felt sorry for them, had pity for them, but I never took time to go over and introduce myself and talk with them. But something moved me that morning, and I walked right to the table where the little boy's sitting, and I said, "Hey, buddy, what's your name?"
I'm HK. What's your name?
"Oh, my name is Jim."
Nice to meet you.
Well, it's nice to meet you, HK.
Where do you live?
I live in Brentwood.
What street?
I live on Harpeth River Drive.
What's that off of?
It's off of Old Hickory Boulevard.
What time did you get up this morning?
I got up at 6 o'clock.
Then what did you do?
I took a shower.
Then what?
Put on my tennis clothes.
Then what?
Drove to Green Hills.
Then
We'll
what?
stop right there. HK could not carry on a conversation. He could ask me questions, but I was trying to ask him questions, but he couldn't answer anything that I asked him. He just kept saying, "What did you do next? I'm thinking, this is the craziest little kid I've ever met." So anyway, I said, "HK, it's been nice to meet you, but I've got to go. I've got some things I've got to do this morning for my wife."
Nice to meet you too. Hope to see you again.
Well, I hope to see you again, and I didn't realize what commitment I had just made, because today is 21 and a half years later, and we're still buddies. But you know, I went and got in my car and put my perfect tasting cup of coffee in the cup holder, and I went to the post office, went to the dry cleaners, and I went to Publix grocery store for Brenda. And when I got home, I realized I had never taken a swallow of coffee because I couldn't get the little boy off my mind that morning. So anyway, the next Saturday, this time after tennis, I go directly to Mrs. Winters to see if he's there. And he is, and I'm not going to do that because of time this morning constraints, but I went up and said, "Hey, buddy." He said, "Hey, what's your name?" I said, "I'm Jim." He said, "Are you the man I met last week?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Where do you live? What'd you do next? What time did you get up? What's up the street?" Anyway, I went back three Saturdays in a row and met him. And the third Saturday, I said, "HK, look, I do the same thing every Saturday morning. In the winter, I play tennis. I get dressed, go to Green Hills, meet my buddies. So this morning, if you ask me those same questions, I'm not going to ever come back to see you, because you need to be telling me about yourself rather than you asking me all those questions. What'd you do next?" And surprisingly, I found out that morning how smart he was, because he has never asked me those questions again. So anyway, that's how our relationship started. Eventually, he started telling me about himself, and what I found out about HK was that on July the 7th of 1990, his parents, who were not married, but his mother was 6 months pregnant, they were involved in a single car accident, and she lost her life. And when the paramedics arrived at the accident scene, they realized that she was pregnant and the baby's heart was still beating. And I'm not a doctor, but they kept her on life support, put her on Vanderbilt's life flight helicopter, and flew her body to Nashville. The next morning, the doctors met with her mother and his father's mother and said, "We don't think your grandson is going to live, although he's right now still alive. We've got the mother on life support. Here's the choices you have," which is a major decision. My decision that morning, turning left, was very minor. They said, "We don't think he's going to live, and we can just take her off life support and let him go with the mother. Or if you prefer, we can deliver him, but we don't think he's going to live long." And fortunately, God intervened and told his mother's mother to deliver the baby. Her quote, exact terms as I've been told, was, "Salvage what you can." So they delivered HK. He weighed about 2 pounds. He was 3 months premature. His mother had never had any neonatal doctoring prior to that day, and she was into drugs and alcohol, so he had a lot of things going against him. But anyway, he survived. Not long after being in the neonatal intensive care, they put him on pure oxygen. They left him, unfortunately, too long, and that's the reason he's blind today. Halfway through his 96 days at neonatal intensive care, he had a stroke, and that caused him to have cerebral palsy and paralysis on his right side of his body. Now, I tell you all that to just tell you that he has overcome all of that. And his grandmother that said deliver him, she passed away last year, but she never came back to see him. So he never knew his mother nor his grandmother on his mother's side. His grandmother on his father's side has raised him. She's dedicated 31 years of her life to giving HK a better life than her son had. He and I spoke 2 years ago at the University of Kentucky, and that morning, after we were speaking that night, that next morning we were leaving, I said, HK, why don't you call home and find out about your dad, because he had not heard anything from his father, who did abandon him, but eventually kind of came back, but really never got into his life. And he called that morning and learned that his father had passed away. So he doesn't have either a mother or father, and I guess what God asked me to be that morning as I went to Mrs. Winters was, could you be maybe a surrogate father for this boy as long as you can? And so it's been 21 and a half years. But anyway, I tell you that story. That's the sad part. The good part is HK, there's nothing he can't, within his capabilities, that he can't do. The teachers, and this is one of the things when we speak at schools, it's so important. I know here at MB it would never happen, but never give up on any child, because the teachers there, I started going to his meetings when they would give him evaluations at the end of 9-week periods. I would go with his grandmother, and they didn't have much confidence in HK's capabilities of graduating and putting him in a regular class environment. But one teacher believed in him and eventually convinced the faculty that he should be in regular classes. And they eventually said, okay, he's old enough to be in the 8th grade, let's put him in the 8th grade. Now, he had never been in a graded class environment. So after 9 weeks, he was doing terrible. And they said, Bill, we told you so. Bill said, let's don't give up on him. Maybe he's not mature enough for the 8th grade. Let's put him in the 6th grade this next 9 weeks. So after the next 9 weeks as a 6th grader, guess what? He made the honor roll. At the end of that school term, they called me and his grandmother and him together and said, HK, you have done so good this year. When you come back next fall, you're skipping 7th grade. You'll be an 8th grader. And from that point on, education was not an issue with HK, and he got a regular diploma. Now, a friend of ours, Scott Hamilton, is an ice skater, and Scott tells a story about trying to learn to ice skate and falling 1,000 times. But he eventually won a gold medal in the Olympics because he got up 1,000 times. And I kind of relate that to HK. He has fallen because he's paralyzed. Sometimes he runs into things and trips easily. He's probably fallen 1,000 times, but he always gets up. And one of the things that we found out that probably HK is limited in what he can do in terms of occupation, but he can certainly entertain an audience, and I hope that you guys felt that this morning. So a few years ago, we were invited to come and speak to a Sunday school class at Christ Presbyterian Church. It was a senior adult class. Average age was about 72 years old. And today I consider that really young. But anyway, we did it. And the gentleman that invited us, I said, David, we have never done this before. We've never spoken to a group. What do you want us to talk about? He said, well, just tell about how y'all met and HK's mother having the car wreck and all that good stuff. And well, we did. And after about 3 minutes of talking, they were passing Kleenex boxes around because everybody was crying. And I'm thinking this must be the worst thing they've ever heard. But it probably wasn't, because then they told somebody, and pretty soon we're going to Brentwood Baptist Church to tell the story. And then one day, Brentwood United Methodist invited us to come to their church and tell our story. And so I invited a friend of mine that makes his living by public speaking. And I said, why don't you come critique us and tell us what we need to do, because HK's getting pretty good at this. And so he did. So we met the next morning at Chick-fil-A in Brentwood. He had a yellow pad about this thick, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I hope he didn't write critiques on every page. But he went over some constructive things for us. He said, oh, by the way, what do you charge? What's your fee? I said, what do you mean, what's our fee? He said, y'all do charge, don't you? Do get paid for, well, no, we don't. HK just loves to do it. He said, well, you're the dumbest guys I've ever met. He said, y'all are pretty good. So anyway, long story short, the next time we got an invitation to speak, I said, he said, what's your fee? And I'm thinking, I'm embarrassed to tell him the figure that I was told we should ask. So I asked 1/10 of that. And the person on the other line said, oh my gosh, we can have y'all back several times. We've never paid that little before. So I said, that was probably not very smart. So the next person that called us, what's your fee? I said, do you have a budget? And he said, yes. I said, do you mind telling me what your budget is? And the person said, now, I'm telling you this. We didn't charge you guys this much. But he said, well, our budget is $10,000 for a speaker. I said, oh, my goodness, that's great. But we're not $10,000 speakers. We'll do it for a lesser fee. And so that and then Coach Gene Stallings, who spoke here one night, who's a former coach at the University of Alabama, he's a big speaker. He speaks all over, and we became friends of Coach's. And anyway, I finally said, Coach, I said, what, if you don't mind, this is what we charge. He said, yeah, that's what you should charge. He said, that's what I charge. And it was for him, I thought it was kind of a low amount because he's won a national championship in football. But anyway, long story short, I might tell you a couple of funny stories. Coach had just lost his own son who had Down syndrome, Johnny. And he brought to Nashville one day, he called me and said, Jim, I'd like to meet HK. I've got something for him. So he had an official Alabama football watch. And he put it on his wrist, and HK felt it and said, what is it, Coach? He said, that's an official Alabama A-Club wristwatch. And HK said, Coach, this is the greatest gift I've ever gotten. He said, I'm going to wear it every day. But then he said, Coach, and Coach said, yes, HK.
I'm still for Auburn.
True story. Coach said, boy, how many Auburn coaches have ever given you a watch?
0.
0? Okay. But anyway, they're still big buddies today. And let me tell you a couple of funny stories. We've averaged until this past year, we've averaged about 35 speaking events across the country for 5 years in a row. We've been in 20-something states. We've even been to the Grand Cayman Islands. We've been in audiences with as little as probably 50 people and audiences as large as 6,000 or 7,000 people. We've never advertised, and all the money that HK earns speaking goes into a trust for his future long-term care. So he's doing things that he can do well, and we're thinking about his future. Let me tell you a couple of stories that are kind of cute. He has this memory. He's one of 11 people in the world that has hyperthymesia, also known as highly superior autobiographical memory. So you don't tell him something. Well, he's not as bad today, but when I first met him, if I told him something that I thought was confidential, he told the person, as soon as he saw him, let me tell you what Mr. Bradford said. I said, HK, that was a secret. Well, I thought they should know. But anyway, there is a fast food restaurant in Brentwood called Backyard Burger. Some of you may know it's on Maryland Way. Well, one Sunday night, he went to church with my wife and I, and so we go to Backyard Burger with some adults. That's the first time we'd ever taken him to church at night with us. And so we go in. HK's height at that time was about 2 inches below where the counter is. So when we walked up, and there's a big crowd that Sunday night, and when we got to the counter to order, and what you do is you order and they give you a number and you go sit down, they call you a number, and then you go get your tray of food. Well, anyway, the man behind the counter taking the orders tiptoed and looked over and said, pardon me, is that you, HK?
Yeah, what's your name?
I'm Stanley.
Are you the one that worked at Miss Winters with my grandmother?
Yes, I used to work with your grandmother Pearl over at Mrs. Winters Chicken and Biscuits.
Are you the one that got fired for smoking marijuana?
Our friends were laughing so hard they had to turn their backs to us. Stanley was a good sport. He said, yes, that was me, HK, but I've learned my lesson. I don't do that anymore. Another cute little story is back, some of you are probably, the students are probably too you know the Titans, but you don't know the players that retired several years ago. But Kevin Mawai was the center. Kevin played 17 years in the NFL. He was inducted this past year into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And he spent the last 4 years of his career here in Nashville. And anyway, he wanted to meet HK. So we got a call one Saturday morning. And we went out to a farm, friends of ours that lived next door to Kevin out in Williamson County. And so Kevin and his wife, Stacy, come walking across the pasture. And anyway, here's Kevin Mawai, 295 pounds, 6'2" or 3 or 4. Nothing but muscle. And here's 4 foot 10 inch, 105-pound HK Dearyberry, and they bond very quickly. And matter of fact, Kevin is holding his hand and talking to him and says, do anybody have a Kleenex? And of course, he's wiping his eyes. I guess it was maybe allergy season. But anyway, the Titans had already started the season that year, and they had played 6 games. Was this 2006?
Yes.
2006. They'd already played 6 games. They had won 1 of those 6 and lost 5. And you know what happens to coaches sometimes when you start that way, you don't last long. And so anyway, long story short, Kevin finally said, HK, I've got to go because we have to be back at the facility here in a little while to do a walkthrough to tomorrow's game. He said, have you ever seen a Titans game?
I've been to a preseason game, but not a regular.
How would you like to go to a regular season game?
I'd love to.
Well, I tell you what, I'll let you go and be my guest. Well, anyway, long story short, Kevin had a skybox, and he invited friends every home game, and so we got to start going to home games to sit in the skybox. That's pretty neat. But anyway, the record is 1-6, and Kevin said, HK, hope we have a good game tomorrow. He said, Kevin, I do too. He said,
are any of the games sold out?
Do I?
Kevin, any of the games sold out?
Oh, yeah. He said, Kevin, are any of your games sold out? Kevin said, well, yes, HK, all of our games are sold out.
I don't know why, because you aren't any good.
Well, Kevin said, you know, HK, you're exactly right. We're not very good, but when I get back down to the facility this afternoon, I'm going to call all the offensive linemen together and tell them exactly what you said. Well, anyway, they were 1-5, and they wound up that season 8-8. So of the next 10 games, they won 7 of them. Every time they would win a game, HK would say,
Mr. Bradford, you think that was my pep talk to Kevin?
I do. So he thinks he motivated Kevin and the Titans to win those games. Now, I know that we've gone over a little bit longer than I told Robert we would take this morning. We normally take an hour or more sometimes if we're speaking, because there's a lot of little stories I can tell. But the main thing we want you to leave with today is realize that anything in life is possible if it's within your capabilities. We heard some young men talk about their mothers today, and just, you know, I was thinking the irony of the relationship of the mothers and then the mother that hugged her son. And HK never had that opportunity to know his mother, and never had the opportunity to really know his father. It just, you know, kind of heartwarming to see the relationships. But in life, I can assure all of you, you're going to have a chance to meet your HK. It may not be a young man that's blind or has cerebral palsy. It could be your next door neighbor. It could be a fellow student in class, maybe one that's being bullied. Probably there's no bullying here at MBA, but some schools there is. It could be a friend of some of the mothers here that's having marital problems or problems with their children. But there's somebody out there that needs help. They need assistance. They need a friend. And that's probably what I did with HK. I became his friend. And he has been life-changing for me, and I'm sure that I've been life-changing for him. But when you reach out to that person that needs that assistance, you're going to change 2 lives drastically. You're going to change theirs, and you'll change yours. And it'll be certainly all worthwhile. We appreciate the opportunity to share our story with us this morning. I don't know if it was mentioned, but we did come out with a book a few years ago that was, first couple of years out, was a bestseller, has done really well. If you haven't read the book, there's a lot more stories. The books are upstairs on a table. They're $20 each. We accept cash or checks or honor system. You can write us a check and mail it to us later or something. But I brought in a few books. You don't have to get one, but if you'd like one, we pre-signed them, so they are signed by HK. And if you'd like a book, we'd love for you to have one. And they're up. This is a tremendous facility, but they're up on the main level someplace. But thank you for having us. God bless you. And
Facebook, if anybody.
What?
If anybody does Facebook.
Okay, I knew he was going to do that. I wasn't going to bring it up. But if anybody here does Facebook, his website is hkderryberry.com. If you like his fan page, you can follow his adventures. Right now, he lost 100 this past year, people, but he has 10,000 something people that follow him now on Facebook. So when we speak, we normally will have a little write-up a little bit later about where he's at. So if you'd like to follow him, go to Facebook and keep up with HK. Thank you so much for having us. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Jim and HK. We will now proceed with the end of the program, and I'll ask Jackson and Ben to come up in that order.
Good morning, students and moms. I hope all of you are enjoying yourselves and the breakfast this morning and those inspiring words from HK. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Mr. Joya for giving me the opportunity to speak about the most important and influential woman in my life. Lane Pickett should be sainted as one of the most caring people in the world because she is someone who is always and will continue to put others over herself, just because she cares. Her entire career is based on caring for others. My mother has worked as the upper school counselor at Battleground Academy for the past 7 years or so. Ever since she earned this title, my brother and I have invented a term for my mom's work personality. We had to invent a term for it because it often comes out around the dinner table. And it starts when my brother and I will be bickering about something random, and Lane will transform into her other self, which my brother and I have deemed counselor mode. Her entrance into counselor mode normally begins when an argument between Lewis and I arises, and the transformation concludes with Lewis and I subsequently getting a bit of totally, highly necessary counseling about some important life lesson that we have frequently heard from her in the past many, many times. But she always resorts to this counseling because she cares about her sons more than anything else, and she wants to do everything in her power to make us overall better men. Her instincts and reminders are always out of love. Everything she does is always out of love. The relationship between a mother and her son should be an unbreakable bond that only gets stronger as time goes on. I am proud to say that the relationship that my mother and I have fits this description perfectly. Our relationship is so strong because she often knows exactly what to say, every single time, no matter the context. Whenever I have a tough day at school or a difficult practice after school, my mom always wants to know what made it tough and how she can make it better. Our bond is also so strong because we spend a lot of time together. She often suggests that we should all sit down as a family and watch a good movie together about once or twice a month. Lane loves these family movie days. My brother and I like the family movie days. And when I say love, I really do mean she loves them. Like, it is a full-on passion. She will schedule these feature films about a week and a half in advance, and she'll make sure everyone in the family marks it down on their calendars so we don't forget. And we aren't allowed to be late, but my mom's definition of late differs greatly from my definition of late. If we scheduled said movie for 4:00 p.m. on a Sunday, I'll get home at about 3:55 or so to make sure I'm on time, right? But in this moment, Lane inevitably will be in the middle of typing an incredibly thought-out email, cooking dinner, making sure our latest MBA tuition check is in on time, talking on the phone to someone from work, and vacuuming the floor all at the exact same time. And then she won't be ready to watch the movie until at least 4:45. But it truly is moments like these family movie days that really can strengthen yours and your mother's relationship, even if your mom doesn't have the best concept of time like mine. People always say that one should marry someone who is like your mother, and I never really understood this adage until I got older. But now that I can clearly see all these amazing qualities that my mother possesses, I know that it will be a true shame if I can't find a girl who is at least half the woman that you are, Mom. I love you, Mom. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ben Locke, a senior, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to brag a little bit about my mother, Kristen Locke, just a bit today. Luckily, I believe that I've been able to keep my speaking a secret until this morning, and this breakfast has always been one of my favorite events. I remember coming to the mother-son breakfast for the first time when I was in 7th grade. My mother was so impressed and moved by the last speech, but then she began to turn towards me and whisper jokingly, "I can't wait to hear what you'll write about me." I immediately told her that there was no chance I would stand up in front of everyone and speak about my mom. As you can see, things can change. So, Mom, you're welcome. It's challenging to find a place to begin, to summarize a lifetime relationship with your mother. Because the mother-son bond is so complex and significant, I've just started to comprehend how much my mother has done for me. And I've still not realized and understood the many ways that she's been looking out for me throughout my life. But thinking back on my journey, my mother's had an outstanding record. I assume the most appropriate place to start would be my 7th grade year at MBA. And I definitely had more of a rough start academically than socially. I quickly became disheartened and unmotivated because of my poor performance compared to my peers. During this time, my mother was my cheerleader, helping me improve and develop as a young student. Without my mother's expectations for me, it would have been virtually impossible for me to survive 7th grade and attend this school today. But this experience wasn't nearly as simplistic and collaborative as I just made it sound. Kristen Locke selflessly guided me through the advent of MBA, but I was often ungrateful and difficult in this process. I did not realize that it was much more exhausting for her to get me to improve in school than it was for me to slack off and never do my work. But thank you, Mom, for putting up with my antics. She could have let me continue on the STEMward path that I was making for myself and lose the opportunity of being at MBA. But she knew that this was the school that I wanted to attend, and she did everything in her power to make me realize that I was good enough to attend this school. Mom, I'm sorry I was so difficult to parent as a 13-year-old boy. Her struggle seemed to pay off, though. As I began to listen and put all my effort into school, I saw improvement. Yet I'd still not fully realized just how much extra love and support she was giving me. Just as I was coming around to my mother's teaching, we hit what one might call a bump in the road. My father unexpectedly passed away during the beginning of my 8th grade year. And this loss blindsided our family. Shocked and confused, I quickly felt alone and briefed of what I had known as our family. Uncertain how to pick up the pieces and understand this loss, I wasn't prepared to live life without a father. None of my family was. I wish I could give some advice on loss and how to process this complex and painful emotions following an event similar to this, but I'm afraid I would not be the person to ask. My mother would be. After his passing, she stood as a support for my younger sister and me, keeping us thankful for what we had, providing us with a perspective that looking forward and remembrance with gratitude is more important than living in the past. But I'd still not learned my lesson previously. I still would not listen and respect my mother as I should have. I became angry, frustrated at my mother because of our situation, because I did not want to think and feel about my emotions. I was fighting hard to forget my father. I was on another self-destructive path, dealing with this loss in an unhealthy way. But my mother helped me see the pettiness and selfishness of my point of view. She showed me only kindness, even while I was dismissive. She wanted me to move forward. She guided our family through the painful months in those years after his passing, always being caring, kind, and understanding, listening to and respecting us, while she had also had to come to terms with her loss on her own. My mother fought to keep my sister and me happy, putting her own life on hold as she tried to help us through ours. And I did not consider all that she was going through to do so, being so strong so I could be weak and vulnerable with her. Mom, I couldn't appreciate this love and sacrifice fully then. It took me a long time to see your perspective, to realize that you were having the same feelings that I was. I'd wish there was enough dirty tissues for me to help make up for all that you've done for me, but I'm not too sure that's possible. As we now tackle a new chapter in our lives, my leaving for school, I want you to know that I understand your strength and compassion and love more fully. I'm more prepared than any education or normal family life could have for school next year because of the ways that you've steered our family and captained us through these difficult times. I love and cherish you, Mom.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Jackson. We will finish our program with the combined choirs, so if they please come over now, join me in welcoming them behind me.
Come over the hills, my bonny Irish lass. Come over the hills to your darling. You choose the road, love, and I'll make the vow, and I'll be your true love forever. Down by Killarney's greenwoods that we strayed, when the moon and the stars they were shining, and the moon shone its rays on her locks of golden hair. She swore she'd be my love forever. Where is the rose that in yonder garden grows? There is the lily of the valley. Clear is the water that flows from the bourne, but my love is fairer than any.
It's not for the parting that my sister grieves. It's not for the grief of my mother. 'Tis all for the loss of my bonny Irish lass. And my heart is breaking forever.
There is the rose that in yonder garden grows. There is the lily of the valley. Clear is the water that flows from the bourne, but my love is fairer than any. Red is the rose that in yonder garden grows. Fair is the lily of the valley. Clear is the water that flows from the bourne, but my love is fairer than any. In the merry month of June, from me home I started at the girls' attune. Yearly broken heart saluted father dear. Kiss me, darling mother, drink a pint of beer. Me griefs and tears to smother and off to reap the corn. Leave where I was born, cut a stout black thorn to banish ghosts and goblins. A brand new pair of brogues, frightening all the pots, frightening all the dogs on the rocky road to Dublin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turn her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin. Whack full Ollie that night I rested them so weary, started by daylight, me spirits frightened, ere you took the Dublin pier. Keep me heart from sinking, that's the Paddy's cure. When I was on for drink to see the lassie smile, laughing all the while, and the curious style of sending water to Dublin. As if I was hired, wages I required, till I was nearly tired of the rocky road to Dublin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turn her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin. Whack full Ollie in Dublin next to ride, I found the sunshine. My city won't have to control. All along the quality bundle it was stole. All in any locality, something crossed me mind. When I looked behind, no bundle could I find. Upon the stick, the wobble environment for the road. Sending one on the road, was it much in vogue on the rocky road to Dublin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Up the hare and turn her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin. Whack the lowly rock. And there I got away, me spirits never failing, landed on the quay just as the ship was sailing. The captain at me roared, said that no room had he when I jumped aboard. Clapping found for Paddy down among the pigs. Rocky road to Dublin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Up the hare and turn her down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin. Whack the lowly rock. Boys of Liverpool, we safely landed, called myself a fool. I could no longer stand it, blood to end the war. 10 for I was losing 4. rightfully run.
Thanks to our choirs. It's great to end with some music. It is terrific to be back with some events. Hope you'll think about getting a book on your way out. Thank you for being here this morning.